Hello and welcome to the January 2021 Supper Club. I'm Clover Beal.
I'm Ian Cummins.
And we are the co-pastors of Montview Church. And we are so grateful to continue the hard conversations around race and racism and what it means to be an anti-racist congregation. This is hard work. And we know that it takes energy, and some of you might feel a little fatigued, but we encourage you to stay in the conversation and continue this work together. I think it will prove to be fruitful for all of us. We've been doing the 21-day challenge that the Presbyterian Church USA developed. We are following a study guide called Facing Racism. So this month we have sessions for day 12, 13, and 14 of the 21-day challenge. What we are encouraging you to do is follow and focus on lesson 4 of the study guide.
Of day 12.
Of day 12. And the reason we really want you to have conversations around this lesson 4 is because it's unpacking definitions that we use when we talk about race and racism. And definitions, terminology, if we're not in a common understanding of what we mean when we use terms like race and white supremacy and racism, we can get it can get tense. It can easily create misunderstanding or offense in a group. So we encourage you to pay attention to that chapter, really unpack those definitions as the writers have in that chapter, and understand them before the conversation.
They do a really nice job, I think, getting to what's underneath. And as you say, so much of our conflict, I think, is at its core, we're using different terms to mean different things to begin with. And so we don't have much chance of finding common ground until we have common language. And so this is a really important chapter for us to explore together. So day 12, which is chapter 4 of the study guide. We just thought we would reflect on a couple of parts out of that chapter that spoke to us from our own lives. And for me, one of the terms they use is white supremacy. And I remember years ago when I first began to hear that term and my own defensiveness about that. And, particularly in my upbringing, what a white supremacist was very different than how I saw myself, of course. And I was in a conference probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and an African-American woman was speaking. We were in a circle, and she self-identified as a white supremacist. And I was lost. I had no idea what she meant by it, but she was talking about the fact that our culture is a white supremacist culture. What that means is simply that we value whiteness above other ethnic backgrounds to the extent that we are white-centered, we are white-dominant, we are white-identified in the culture itself. Now, all of us individually might be trying to work against that, but she was just self-acknowledging that she is in that too, and she too is a victim of that. We're all victims of this misunderstanding, and it's been horribly devastating, and the violence that it's contributed to. So the chapter does a nice job of identifying that, and I think it's all about these little self-realizations like I had that day of understanding language and what we're all really in the middle of as we try to work our way out of this dark space.
Right, and for me, exactly the same of unpacking the language. So talking about racism isn't about shame about how I am racist. I might have, and I do have prejudice and even bigotry, but becoming aware of my bigotry or my prejudice and identifying it as not the same thing as structural, the way we put structures in place in society that keep people of color out of access to power. And that's very different. And I think it's important to understand that to not be defensive about it, to unpack it in our own lives and the way we see it operating in the world. Another thing that was and is important to me is the understanding of other ways that there are structural hierarchies in our culture, and so male dominance and colonialism as a dominant structure, that there are other ways that we operate in the world that are based on assumptions of power and who owns power and who gets the power. They're heavy topics, and yet if we can step back and hold them loosely and understand them before we push back, I think is essential.
Well, the chapter does a nice job of talking about this, the intersectionality. You remember that piece of what you're getting at,
right.
when you are overlaying all these layers of colonialism or sexism and racism. It's an interesting chapter. I think you'll enjoy unpacking it together.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best in this study guide.
I do too. So we'll put some questions from the chapter, from the discussion guide at the end. I think there's 5. I think we'll pick 3 of those for you to explore, and we hope it's fruitful for you.
Yeah. Blessings to you. Have good evenings on Zoom with your groups, and may your study produce fruit.